Retro.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and Rook Cast, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continually unexpected.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we're going to look at some Star Wars news and then dive into issues 7 through 12 of Legacy of Vader. In this episode, we're going to actually do Legacy of Vader 7 through 12, both this episode and the next episode. But there's a lot to discuss, and this is going to be fun. Jay, you want to remind everybody what our social media contacts are real quick?
Sure thing, Dennis. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Podcast Stardust.
All right. Pitch is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we're going to start off with a look at some news. And as we were talking about last week, we had been sitting there waiting for the drop of the Ninth Jedi trailer. And of course, it happened like 2 hours after we finished recording our news.
Of course it did.
They made us wait, but they don't usually give me heads up about these things. I'm kidding. It didn't happen. All right. So we're going to briefly discuss this trailer a little bit before we get into Legacy of Vader. So background, this series, which is 8 episodes, it's going to premiere on August 5th, picks up after, not long after is what they're saying, the 2 episodes that were on Vision's season 1 and season 3. Not long after those events. And in this series, La Kyra continues to train in the ways of the Jedi under Margrave Juro amid an epic journey of self-discovery as she and Juro's small fellowship of Jedi in training embark on a quest to save her father. And of course, her father is a renowned lightsaber smith. I don't know what you call someone who makes lightsabers, because usually Jedi make them on their own.
Good way.
Yeah. I was like, what do you call them? Okay. Any rate, so there you go. That's the brief description of it. We've got this trailer. There's some details we can talk about. But Jay, what was your overall reaction to the trailer?
Well, it actually got me really excited because I know you and I both, the Ninth Jedi was not exactly our favorite of the episodes, especially from the latest Visions, anthology, if you will, that we got from Disney Plus. But this actually made me a lot more excited to dive into these. And it's got, the action just seems really fluid. The scale seems pretty cinematic. And just the characters seem like those that you want to know a little bit more about. And obviously we got some of that from the original Visions episodes, but not of this scale. So overall I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm on board with this. But how do you feel?
Yeah, overall I was intrigued by this. And to backtrack before I give my overall opinion, I'll say this. I remember liking the episode of the Ninth Jedi that we got in season 1 of Visions, and then you and I were very disappointed with the one that we got in season 3. It just I remember the droid being kind of annoying, Cara being, I don't know, it was one of those things that had some neat visuals, but it didn't have to be Star Wars with the way it came out. And I don't want to overreact to this trailer, but it seems like there was a course correction maybe with what they showed us, and it is looking at this notion of light side and dark side a bit more. The visuals themselves aren't overly familiar outside of lightsabers of what we're used to from Star Wars. And that's one of the things we liked about the Ronin series, is that it gave us a lot of familiar looking elements, but turned things on its head with some great stories, about the Sith, the kind of reimagining the Sith. In this one it's like, well, they're giving us a Star Wars adjacent type stories with a different type of visuals. Because I remember when we watched the episode from season 3, we thought the ship looked like it belonged more in Star Trek than it did in Star Wars, which I still think is the case, having watched this. But that's the thing you have to be careful with these trailers is they can cut them to make them look like they're something they're not.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah, for sure.
right. And so I'm very intrigued by this. It looks like a great Star Wars adventure where you got themes of the light side and the dark side. And we can talk about this in just a bit more in the going forward. And I appreciate that. I really need to see the execution of this. So, I mean, it's going to start August 5th. I couldn't tell from the announcement whether they're going to give us, they're just going to drop all the episodes at once, or if it's going to be a weekly release, or how they're going to do it. They haven't had any separate release schedule announced, and I haven't found anything
Mhm.
on that. So I'm anticipating they're going to drop the whole season on August 5th. And so after this, you and I'll have to decide how we're going to cover that
Yeah.
when we get around to it. I'm kind of the mind to, if we like it well enough, to do it an episode at a time, one per week, and go from there.
Mhm.
Especially since we don't have any brand new Star Wars content on screen, I should say, coming for the rest of the year. So,
Yeah, it's
any rate,
true. Yeah, and I'm hoping that this series will allow the storyline to kind of breathe a little bit more. You know what I mean?
sure.
Because I feel like with what we got in the Visions anthology, that there was just a lot of unanswered questions and there was a lot of things that were just left undone. And Kara herself just didn't have, I don't know, the depth of character that made me really want to care about her as much as I'm hoping that they're going to do with the series.
Yeah, that's well said. I understand that this studio is making content for an anime audience, which first and foremost is people in Japan. And I hope I didn't misspeak there because I don't watch a lot of anime in general. And so that may have resonated very well with its intended audience, and it just didn't resonate well with me. But one of the things I thought was really great about this is that there was some familiar Star Wars themes in this, and or elements. And one, a kyber crystal super weapon shows up in this trailer,
Mhm.
which was cool looking, and but it wasn't like the Death Star, and it also wasn't the, I can't remember what they call the class of Star Destroyers from the Rise of Skywalker that were equipped with plant destroying weapons or whatever, but they've got something like that. Okay, cool. We're used to that. And then there was a lot about lightsabers. And we even get like a Vader stand-in in Noah. You can
Yes.
see the Vader influence with him. And he's talking about how he's going to bring order to the chaos. Well, that's straight out of the Emperor's big book of speeches, right? I mean, that's what
Exactly.
they're all about. To the Republic's going to be organized to the Empire to promote peace and security, type of a thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. And but they've thrown in this big ambiguity because we know Kara's father is this elite saber smith, and this everyone wants his lightsabers, and they reflect the um the heart, the soul of the user. And so we get this later scene in the trailer where Noah is using a lightsaber and it's blue. And so it's like they're kind of like I don't know what to think about that. Like that they chose to reveal that in the trailer, because that seems like a big twist, right? And
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
not even giving it to they're not even waiting until episode 1. They're giving it to us in the trailer. So on the one hand, it's intriguing, and now I'm more interested in the series than I was before. But it was also kind of like that would have been a really cool reveal if they had waited till the series dropped to show us.
Yeah, and I do feel like, and maybe that is something that I felt when I was watching this too, is that it almost feels like it revealed a bit, I don't want to necessarily say too much, but I mean, there was a lot there, which again is kind of cool because it makes you excited to see the why and not just the what of
Right.
what they were showing us. But then again, at the same time, yeah, you're right. It does kind of make you go, huh, okay, that's something.
And if that didn't draw you in enough, there's a later scene in this trailer where Kara's using a lightsaber with a red blade.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, I mean, that could be a complete red herring that someone who had a red lightsaber, she picked it up because she didn't have access to hers. Or did she get a hold of one of her father's lightsaber or her own lightsaber, and she's shifted and, has now got evil in her heart. So now she's fallen to the dark side or whatever. Then it's also accompanied with this great line from Noah in the trailer, which is like, where he's fighting with her. And he says, "Does the force really guide you? How many people have you killed for the sake of justice?"
Yeah.
So it's, I'll say this. It's like, while I am not going to say this is the most exciting, okay, let me rephrase. This is not the most excited I am about an upcoming Star Wars project, but my interest is very piqued in this. And so it went to from being something that was just kind of like on the release radar to I am now going to watch this on August 5th and see what's
Mhm.
going on there.
Mhm.
But that's my feeling on it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm especially really intrigued by, as you said, the way that they've taken some of the common Star Wars themes and elements and sort of flipped them. And I think the
Mhm.
one that's I'm most excited about is the whole idea that the kyber crystal, as you pointed out, reflects the user's heart. And so it
Right.
can, and that's just a really cool concept. And I think that that's also really cemented in a lot of, Japanese culture kind of things as well as symbolisms. So I like where they're going with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, it was a 2-minute trailer. I think we hit the high points. I really want to get into Legacy of Vader. So do you have any other last things you want to say about this trailer before we move on?
Oh, not really. Just
Okay.
like you said, more excited about the series now that we've gotten this look.
All righty then. Well, there you have it. That's our news for the week. And now we're going to move into our Legacy of Vader discussion. So we discussed issues 1 through 6 in our last episode, and we're going to turn our attention to issues 7 through 12 in this episode here. And Jay, it's really like 3 different stories that are going on here. Issue 7 tells something about this Jedi that Kylo wants to go off and find and kill to prove his worth. And then issues 8 and 9 are about the Ren. And then 10 through 12 are really the extended resolution of the story where Kylo returns to Mustafar to confront Van A, finally tries to find the power he's been looking for. And it resolves this whole issue about kill the past versus we are our past type of thing. So we kind of got 3 different stories here. What did you think about this back half overall of the Legacy of Vader series?
Well, it definitely took a turn, and I have
Mhm.
lots of questions. There was, just when I thought it was going, okay, we're doing this whole pilgrimage thing and the whole, okay, I want to kill the past, and then he's learning about his past, and then it was like, whoa, this just went really psychedelic in a lot of ways, and there's just a lot of things that were going on that I never expected to see, and I'm a little confused about some of them, not gonna lie. So I'm hoping as we go through this, I'll get your perspective and see
Sure.
if I can sort it out.
Well, spoiler alert for our conversation. I am completely enamored with this series. These 12 issues were awesome. And for me, it just cements how much I love Charles Soule's Star Wars writing here. Especially where he ends this and sets up the fall of Kylo Ren series that's coming up as well. So I'm really eager to discuss this. We're gonna get as far as we can in this episode of the podcast, and then we'll continue the discussion on Monday in the next episode of the podcast. But let's start with issue 7 because, in a way, it's its own standalone. And we got to see at the end of issue 6, he went off to this planet to find a Jedi that Van A had located for him because he's again walking in the footsteps of Vader, and Vader was responsible for Order 66, or at least a big part of it. And so now Kylo's going to do the same thing, and he's ended up in this bar as we saw in issue 6, and he has no patience, and he immediately starts trying to pull out of the bartender's mind this identity of this Jedi. And then this Thelan shows up, Grandea, and force pulls his lightsaber away from him, and she turns out to be in a Survivor Order 66. And I am very fascinated by this character, Jay.
Mm.
She survived Order 66 when her master, who was a Rhodian, did not. And she basically threw everything she had into the Jedi mind trick and perfecting it over the years. That was her key to survival. It's the stormtroopers would show up. It's like, you never saw me, whatever. And then other people, it's like, I was never here. You were happy to help me. And now it's time for you to move on. Just all these things are playing to the point where when she ended up getting trapped on a planet where Vader and the 9th and 13th sister shows up, she was able to use the Jedi mind trick on them to convince them that they had killed her.
Yeah.
And she got away with all of that. That was This episode, this is a problem with doing
I do that too.
podcasts about comics, is that it's not an episode, it's an issue. But this issue isn't. It does say something about Kylo Ren at the end, but it's as much about this character as it is anything else. What do you think of that storyline?
No, I agree. I think that Grandea is a fascinating character, and I really appreciated the fact that after Order 66, she could feel there was just something wrong, with what was going on, and but yet she didn't want to choose a life of being a hermit.
Right.
She was listening to the Force, and it was telling her to live, to get out there and to live. And the way that she did that, as you just pointed out, is that she was able to mold the minds of those who she dealt with and confronted or, saw on a daily basis, so that she was basically just sort of a ghost passing through, and she could do what she wanted. But I love the idea that she perfected the mind trick, and it even worked on Toydarians and Hutts, and which normally are not affected by those kinds of things. And as you pointed out as well, on the Inquisitors that truly believed that she was incinerated, because even Vader was like, "Well, where's the body?" "Oh, she's dead. She's incinerated. We're sure of it."
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was pretty fascinating. And just the fact that when she was dealing with Kylo Ren, she could just read his mind. She didn't even have to do much of anything, and she was saying, "But it's because you're screaming it. It's kind of easy to
I'm
pick
Kylo
it
Ren.
out." Yeah. It's not like I was going rummaging through there, my boy. You
Right.
were kind of like putting it right out there.
So let me ask you a couple questions. One, was that Toydarian Watto? It sure looked like him.
It did look like him, but I hate to say that, like, a lot of the huts all look the same, and I probably couldn't pick out one
Yeah.
Grandian from another, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. It was just with
Grandinian.
the portrayal of this Toydarian. It was that he had a similar get up, the accessories that Watto wore, and so that's why I was
Mhm.
wondering if it was Watto.
Yeah,
They
I
left
didn't
it
look that
ambiguous enough that
closely.
I think you can make up your own mind about whether that's the case or not. I also love the fact that she was talking about how after Order 66 was issued, she got this message from one of the Jedi of the Temple about trusting in the Force, which we all
Mhm.
know to be Obi-Wan's message. So that was a nice little drop there as well. But then, as great as this issue was, we've got to get through them because all of these issues are so deep.
They
But
really are.
she's told this story to Kylo, and then he's kind of like, I don't care about all this. And
Right?
her point is trying to tell him, is like, you came here to fight a Jedi. I'm not a Jedi. I gave up being a Jedi. I'm just surviving. I'm doing the will of the Force. And he takes a swipe at her, but it doesn't kill her.
Mhm.
And then she's levitating through the Force above the ground. He takes another swipe at her, and she disappears. And there's no body. And the entire village that he's been in is like worn out. It's a ghost town there.
Mhm. Mhm.
What did you make of that?
Yeah, I was a little confused by that, because you even see in Grandia's eyes, they just become more like glowing orbs than anything
Mhm.
else. So, yeah, so I was a little confused about that. So I didn't know if Grandia was actually dead, that Kylo had killed her, but she had enough force power to be able to give him one last message.
Mhm.
But yeah, so what do you think?
Well, I love the ambiguity here because I think you could come up with a lot of different theories and no one could really tell you that you're wrong on these here.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
so he shows up at this village, he's looking for a Jedi, and then the Jedi shows up. So one way of looking at this is that Grandea became aware that Kylo Ren showed up, and they're, through the Force, she sensed his presence, sensed his malevolence, and so she, through her mind trick abilities, was able to create the impression that there was this village, and that's where she showed up, so that she was protecting the rest of the planet, right? And she made Kylo believe that he was interacting with all these other people before she interacted with him at that bar. Told her story to try and talk him down. When he didn't buy it, she still convinced him just long enough that he had killed her, and she made her escape. And there was no point in Kylo he was frustrated when he realizes that he didn't actually kill her. That's the way I took it at this end of this. He was, angsty Ben Solo, for lack of a better description, right?
Yeah.
And the alternate way is that, because that's the big thing, is that village is a ghost town at the end of the story, but it was alive when he first got there. So the first time I read through, I didn't catch the whole ghost town aspect of it when she was quote unquote killed, and the Jedi mind trick thing. And it's like, oh, I really appreciate the fact that she's just been describing her Jedi mind trick, and she became so good at that ability that she convinced Kylo that he had actually killed her, and then pulled back the curtain at the end to realize, you're not going to be successful here. I can hide from you in plain sight, type of a thing.
I
But
like
either
that.
way, I think it's the same thing. It's like she's convinced, she's shown Kylo her truth, her past, whichever way you want to go with this. And it's like, yep, you thought you came here to kill a Jedi. You tried to do it. Guess what? I'm still alive, and you're not going to find me. Of course, the danger of doing that with Kylo Ren is he can call in the first order. They can bombard the planet until she shows up. So lots of
So
things that can
true.
happen there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it is a very impressive way to present this part of the story because it does leave it up to interpretation,
Mhm.
which is just brilliant. And yeah, I like it.
And the other big drop from this issue, boy, I'm slurring my words when I say that, and I don't mean to. But the other big issue from this issue is that Kylo did not know that Luke was dead
Mhm.
at the end of The Last Jedi, that he was intending to, after he dealt with Grandea, to track down Luke and take him out. And
Yeah.
so this is a revelation for him that, oh, wait, Luke's no longer around.
Yeah, because I guess when would he have figured that out? Because, of course, at the end of The Last Jedi, the last thing he heard Luke say to him was, "See you around, kid." And
Right.
then that was it. And
But
then
he
we get
didn't.
into The Last Skywalker.
Right. But Rey and Leia felt his passing, and
And he
Kylo did
did not.
not. So what does that say about Kylo? I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there to see if you have any interpretations.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it from that aspect, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I
And that
mean,
does kind of come up later too,
oh
with
yeah, I
the
can't wait
fact
to talk
that
about that
yeah.
part.
Yeah.
There are so many great ideas in this little 12 issue series that they're fantastic. But okay. So anything else you want to say about Grandea before we move on to issue 8 and 9?
No, I'm glad that they dove into a backstory like that because
Mhm.
I always do appreciate getting those points of view from the Jedi that survived Order 66 and then, directly how did they survive and what did they end up doing? So I thought that was really cool.
All right. So issues 8 and 9 deal with the Knights of Ren. And as issue 8 begins, we have Tava Ren, who is the current leader of the Knights of Ren, and they're in Vandor, which we last saw on screen anyway, in Solo, Star Wars story, right? And anyway,
Okay.
yeah, so
Mhm.
that's the planet where they tried to rob the Convex. But
That's
so,
why that sounded familiar. I could not
right,
place it. I'm glad you put that in the notes.
so they're there. They're trying to basically rob some sort of a monastery, and Tava is lecturing one of these monks. They don't explicitly call them monks, but that's how I interpret them to be, some sort of a monastery type there. And there's a vault that she wants to get into, and she's going on about how the Knights of Ren take what they want, and they're not afraid to kill to do it. And then all of a sudden, like the reinforcements for the monks show up, and the rest of the Knights of the Ren retreat and leave her there by herself to deal with this. And she ends up getting back to them on the Night Buzzard, their ship, and she's like, "What is with you guys?" And then they lay out the entire history of the Knights of Ren from Kylo to the present. And we'll get to that in just a second. But honestly, as much as I like Charles Soule and everything he does with his writing, I was a little disappointed this is the way that Knights of Ren turned out. If I'm going to be honest here, because when we see them in The Force Awakens and we see them in The Rise of Skywalker, they are these. The Force Awakens, they're walking around with Kylo on the Star Destroyer, and we see the one stormtrooper says, like, ghouls, is like the response of like, these are people to be feared. And I guess, and then they show up in The Rise of Skywalker as the people that are standing between Kylo and getting to Sidious and Rey, what's going on there. And
Mhm.
they're not afraid to challenge him here, but they're utterly afraid of the legacy of Kylo. And, they tell Tavin this is like, we were all on board, but you overstated what the risk was going to be in this situation. So I kind of feel like the reputation got taken down a notch with this, but what did you think?
I agree, and for me, there was I don't know, it was just unsatisfying in the way that the Knights of Ren themselves just seemed a lot akin to, like, Markian Rose, minions, so to
Mhm.
speak. And
Denial?
yes, they were the Nile, yes. And so yes, they were to be feared because of the havoc that they could wreak, but yet they didn't carry the same type of weight
Right.
that, like you were saying, that we were led to believe that they were in the other pieces of media and movies and things that we've gotten.
Right. And
So yeah.
so the one redeeming aspect of this is that Tava, this I thought this was a cool character. She's this redheaded woman who's taken over the Knights of the Ren. She ended up working for the same crime boss that they were working for, which is a guy named Bidet. And when they screwed up and killed the wrong person, they got thrown into a cell and were about to be executed. And then she killed Bidet because she needed one good death in order to join the Knights of Ren. The same that Kylo had to do in the Rise of Kylo Ren, which was cool. But she's like, okay, you guys are broken. I need to fix this. You've got the ghost of your former leader, Kylo Ren, hanging over with you. And we'll get to that in just a second. So I'm going to go take him out, is essentially her plan. And the Knights of Ren are laying out their history. And we get that image from The Force Awakens, where Rey is having her vision after she's touched the Skywalker lightsaber. And we
Mhm.
get to see Kylo run through some guy from behind. It's a warlord that the Knights of Ren were sent to assassinate. And so it's kind of like a mystery from that Force vision's been solved.
It is, but yet for me, and maybe I'm just overthinking this, but I just feel like there's a lot of disconnect in the history of the Knights of Ren. Like for example, I want to know, okay, so the Ren believe in this shadow, which is the dark side of the Force. So where did they come from though, as far as a group to, because eventually as we see, with Tava Ren and the shadow, it seems like it's more than just touching the dark side of the Force. There's almost like a metacognition kind of
Yeah.
level to this. And so I'm just feeling a little lost in terms of what, how did they emerge and like where does this all come from? And did they just, they're all Force user. Well, I don't know if they're all Force users, but we know that Tava is for sure, and obviously
They can
Kylo
all
is for
touch
sure.
the shadow.
They can
So
touch it. So, but uh,
these
yeah.
we have a bunch of these answers. We just haven't revisited them recently, and that's in the Rise of Kylo Ren series.
Mhm. Mhm.
They, because that describes how Kylo took out the Ren and became Kylo Ren and all this. And there was, one good death was outlined there. And the Ren spends plenty of that comic telling Ben Solo what they are all about and where they came from. We don't have the individual introduction of each members of the Knights of Ren and how they became part of this group, but we have enough to go on. But I'm just rusty on that story.
I
So
must
that's
be
on.
too because I
Yeah.
can't remember that the whole genesis for this.
Right. I just, I want to keep this RPG rating, but I just remember the Knights of Ren being much more BA, if you know what I mean,
Mhm.
than they
I
were
do.
in this series. And so, okay, so moving past that, the situation is that Tava took them over and they were having success, but she could never really get them to the level that she knew that they were capable of. And after they explained their history, that they had been working with the Ren, they took in Ben Solo after he gave them one good death. He killed the Ren and became Kylo Ren, but then Snoke showed up after that warlord thing I was just talking about and told Kylo, it's time for you to join me and achieve your destiny. The Knights of Ren serve their purpose, but they are the rats of the dark side. So
Yeah.
further kind of degrading what the Knights of Ren are supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and yeah, Snoke definitely had nothing nice to say, that's for sure. Not that he
Right.
would, but
Which is weird because, in The Force Awakens, when what exactly what the dialogue was, but Snoke is kind of like chiding Kylo. It's like, even you, master of the Knights of Ren, like that is supposed to be something, but that's completely contradicted by this right here, that they
Mhm.
are the rats, that they are kind of dark side rabble in this situation. And if that's the case, and I'm assuming we're going to get the answer to this in the fall of Kylo Ren series that's coming up soon. Why did Kylo go back to these guys and round them up
Yeah,
to use them
exactly.
in the Rise of Skywalker? So that's an open story. I'm really, really curious about it.
Me too. Yeah, Snoke almost act to me, it seemed like he was almost telling Kylo Ren, like, "All right, you've sown your wild oats. You've
That's
done what you needed to do. Time to settle down with the true dark side." You know what I mean?
right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah. So anyway, we got Tava who shows up on his Star Destroyer, and it's all a ruse. Her plan is to get there and then get into Kylo's good graces, and then once he's kind of lowered his defenses, take him out, and then return to the Knights of Ren. And then she's going to say, "I've given you one good death. I've taken out your boogeyman. Let's go, wreak havoc across the galaxy." And Kylo hears all this, and he's hearing her flattery about how, she's pointing out, like, you're a wild man, you're free, you are not this machinery of the First Order, you're not this war machine and stuff like that. You want to run with this. So maybe that's a clue for what's going to happen in the fall of Kylo Ren there. And he's like, listens to that, he's like, yep, yep, yep. And then he hits the button on the comm. It's like, yeah, officer, there is a redheaded woman dressed in black clothing. She's an intruder. Shoot to kill when you see her. And she's completely floored by this. And then she makes her way back to the Night Buzzard, and he allows her to escape. They have a beat on the ship, and he doesn't give the order to fire.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm not sure how I feel about Tava Ren, quite honestly. I almost feel like she's a little too on the nose with Mara Jade in the way that she looks and kind of the way that she acts. Because we
Huh.
know Mara from Legends, obviously, she was the assassin. She was the sword and for the Emperor, and she, you know what I mean? Like, I don't
Yeah, the
know,
Hand of
she
the
just
Emperor. Right.
the hand of the Emperor, and she
Yeah.
she just seems a little too Mara Jade in that vein to me at that point in time. And the way that she and Kylo were battling just reminded me a lot of the things that we got from she and Luke in Legends. But what do you think?
That's interesting. I hadn't even considered that till you brought it up. I guess my immediate reaction is that Mara is way more disciplined than Tava is.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah.
she wasn't all about like wreaking havoc in the galaxy and just taking what she wanted. She was about duty, and she was about purpose and serving the Emperor. And then she couldn't get away from that last command from the Emperor, which was kill Luke Skywalker,
Mhm. Mhm.
until she, spoiler alert, killed the clone. But that's fascinating. I wonder if she didn't have red hair, if you'd feel differently about her.
Maybe.
Um,
And
yeah,
green eyes. Just she was just like I said, just a little too on the nose for me for that.
yeah. Well, that's I hadn't even put that together until you said it. I'm gonna have to think about that some more. But she gets away, and so there is this dangling plot thread that's going to be into our next series. Again, I mentioned a couple times now, the fall of Kylo Ren. So yeah, so we got that to look forward to. But
Mhm.
I'm curious about what you think this says about Kylo, because she's shown up dangling a relic of his past. And this entire series has been about, on his perspective, kill the past, or, let the past die, kill it if you have to, if it's going to get in the way of who you're meant to be, versus Von A saying, we are our past. Vader drew power from his past. And he kind of wavers here. What do you think about that?
Mhm. Yeah, because he had the opportunity to kill something from his past. In this sense, it's what Tava Ren represents, at
Hmm.
least, and he doesn't
Yeah.
do it. And he lets the buzzard get away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and if nothing else that I've taken away from all of these issues, he almost said episodes too. These issues is that there's a lot more to Kylo Ren slash Ben's mental state than I really paid attention to. He's definitely out there in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because of the things that he has chosen to put himself through, because there's so many instances where you look at why he came to this point where he did, and basically what we've gotten from the movies is that it all fell apart when Luke basically turned on him, you know? And
Mhm.
then from there he fell apart and he went down this horrible path. But realistically, he had so much going for him in his upbringing, and for him to snap in that way is just wow. Comparatively speaking to what someone like Anakin went through when he became Vader.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah,
and we'll get into
it's
more of that in these next issues.
right, which is gonna be our next episode at the rate we're going right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the thing is like with Kylo here, it's that, he's been steadfast. It's like him becoming the supreme leader of the First Order is like his therapy for dealing with whatever perceived childhood trauma he has. And we'll get into more of that in the next the last 3 issues of the series. But he's taken over the First Order. He's killed Snoke, and he's trying to wrestle with this whole concept of legacy. And well, we really got to get into the next 3 issues to talk about this thoroughly. And so he's like destroying all the connections he has now, and he's reaching back to something else in order to be the person that he like admires and wants to be in this situation, which there's a lot to say about that. We need a psychologist to help us out with this. But anyway, it's neither here
Yes.
nor there. Um, and so he gets someone like Tava Ren shows up, and here's the other inconsistency of this. Like, she didn't realize what the legacy of the Ren name was, but she took it. She was just Tava, and then she
Yeah.
became one of the Knights of Ren. She was leading them, and she points out, it's like, I joined them. I gave them the good death so I could join them, and then I became their leader, and I couldn't tell if it was because they were just kind of like bored with trying to figure out what they wanted to do on their own, or that I'd actually earned their respect. But it was not until after this failed mission on Vandor where they explained the whole Ren legacy. There was a guy named the Ren. Kylo killed him. It became Kylo Ren, and then they were working for Bidet. They're the Knights of Ren, but there was no Ren. And then she joined them and became Tava Ren. Well, why? What
Mhm.
led her to believe, even to think of taking that name?
Mhm.
So that's kind of a missing detail. I don't want to say it's a plot hole, but it's a missing detail, at least
Right.
in this regard. And then she even points out to Kylo that you want to say that the Knights of Ren mean nothing to you, but you still call yourself Kylo Ren.
Yes. Because it's funny that she called him out on that, because I was thinking that as I was watching or, going through this issue, is that did he keep the name then?
Mm-hmm.
If it was something that he left behind, if he's
Right.
trying to kill the past, why does he still want to identify with that? He could have picked any name he wanted to.
I mean, look, we all know the reason. There's some messiness with the way that we transition from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi to The Rise of Skywalker, right?
True. Yes.
And the Knights of Ren weren't really adequately defined in The Force Awakens, completely ignored in The Last Jedi, and then they resurfaced in The Rise of Skywalker because J.J. Abrams
Mhm.
created them and wanted them to be around. So,
Mhm.
okay, so we get that. But yeah, I am hoping that the Fall of Kylo Ren series that Charles Soule's written addresses some of this stuff a little, and I think it will. He's too talented a person to kind of leave these open issues like this that are screaming to us from this series out there. And spoiler: the last couple panels of this entire series basically tell us that you got to read the Fall of Kylo Ren. So
Mhm. For
anyway,
sure.
okay. Well, we've about used up our time for this, and I want to save these last 3 issues for our next episode. But is there anything about these 3 issues that we haven't discussed that you want to cover before we go?
No, I think we pretty much hit everything that we needed to, and I'm excited to dive into the last 3 issues for our
All
next
right.
episode.
Excellent. Okay. Well,
Mm.
then we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of Podcast Stardust and this discussion of the week's Star Wars news and Legacy of Vader's. Well, this was issues 7 through 9, but we were trying to talk about all 6 issues at once, but didn't happen. We hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already, so that when we drop our next episode covering these last 3 issues, that you will have it downloaded automatically into your podcast feed. We do greatly appreciate it when you do things like, rate, subscribe, leave comments on the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. That we love the feedback when we can find it. And Jay will give you some more ways of getting in touch with us in just a minute. And I need to go back and check Spotify and YouTube and all those other places and find some other comments, because I've been getting alerts. I just haven't had an opportunity to get back and respond to y'all. So thank you for indulging me, and I will try and get back to y'all here soon. Of course, the home of Podcast Stardust is over at retrozap.com. It's also home to a bunch of other great podcasts. Go check out everything that's going on. The most active shows right now over there are Enjoy Stuff and Superhero Suite. They've been putting out some good content lately, so go see what Jay and Josh are up to. Jay, that would be Jay Shepard, the other Jay. But Jay Krebs, you want to go ahead and remind everybody where they can find us online and otherwise get in touch with us?
Yes. So we would love it if you would connect with us. We have our 2 main platforms on social media, which is Instagram and Facebook at Podcast Stardust. And then we also have our Pinterest boards that you can check out for all kinds of fun ideas for everything Star Wars. And then you can also listen to all the episodes on YouTube and YouTube Music. So we don't do video, just audio. But again, you can catch all the episodes there. And you can also leave comments and subscribe, share that out to your friends, all the stuffs. And then if you'd like to drop us a line, we'd love to hear what you think about these issues of this comic and upcoming and anything else that we're doing as well. Podcastartist@gmail.com is the way to do that. And then we also have a TeePublic store, so you can pick up one of 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of fun Podcast Artist merch. So don't miss out on that. And like I said, hit up the link in our show notes.
Okay, so upcoming on the show, on Monday, we would normally be talking about the Clone Wars, but we're going to go ahead and skip the Clone Wars for this week while we get through the last 3 issues of Legacy of Vader. And then on Wednesday, we are getting into the next, this month's installment of World Between Worlds, where Jay has rounded up a bunch of Star Wars fashion and lifestyle finds for us. So be on the lookout for that. All right. Thanks for listening to episode 1056 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.